Good morning, and welcome to the National Finals Hall. My name is Nathan DeYoung, and I'm going to be your host today for today's event. The four speakers you are about to see are certainly leaders amongst their peers. Each speaker has tackled one of the greatest challenges for people all over the world, public speaking. To take their determination one step further, these students have only had 30 minutes to prepare their speech. Over the next event featured on this stage will be the National Extemporaneous Public Speaking event. The following four speakers have quite challenging tasks before them. These individuals have had 4 to 6 minute speech on a randomly selected topic in the past 30 minutes. The topics include the most current issues in agri-science and technology, agri-marketing and international relations, food and fiber systems, and urban agriculture. Speakers are scored in 7 different areas, including speech content, organization of the material, power of expression, voice, stage presence, general effect, and response to questions. The National FFA Extemporaneous Public Speaking event is sponsored by the American Farm Bureau Federation as a special project of the National FFA Foundation. As you can imagine, the responsibility of scoring this event is not taken lightly. We are fortunate to have with us 5 highly qualified and well-respected judges for this endeavor today. When your name is called, please stand to be recognized. Julie Taish, Executive Director of the American Farm Bureau. Julia Wickard, State Executive Director of the United States Department of Agriculture, Farm Service Agency, Indiana. Amir Fahi, Dow AgroScience. Krista Cupp, Tyson. And finally, Annalise Henderson, West Virginia State FFA alumni. As a part of each of these speaker scores, they will also have to remain within the time constraints that are set in the extemporaneous public speaking rules. This makes our timekeepers a crucial component of this event. Today, our timekeepers are John Sellenrick and Aaron Neesmith. Please help us ensure that this session runs smoothly by observing a few basic rules to provide a fair environment for all of our speakers presenting today. Please take a moment to silence and turn off all electronic devices, including cell phones. Once Courtesy Corp seals the doors, you must remain quiet and remain in your seat. No one will be allowed to enter or exit the auditorium during a participant's speech. If you must step out, you must please wait to do so in between speakers. Thank you for your cooperation in advance. Judges, are you ready? Courtesy Corps, would you please secure all doors at this time? Our first speaker today is Evan Smith of the Bloom Carroll FFA chapter in the state of Ohio.
Just last week, I had the ability to exhibit 2 market steers at the Fairfield County Fair in Lancaster, Ohio. Now, my 2 market steers weighed 1,200 pounds and 1,300 pounds. And at the end of the week, we had the ability to go and take them into an auction and a sale. Now, at this sale, not only did we get an auction price, but we also gained a packer bid value for our animals. That means our animals gained value as they were sold per pound. I began to think about my past 10 years showing at this county fair and how that packer bid has changed over the last 10 years. And I can tell you, just about 3 years ago, that packer bid had peaked. But why is it fluctuating so much throughout these years? Hello, I'm Evan Smith, representing the Bloom Carroll FFA chapter in the great state of Ohio. Today, I have drawn a topic about the U.S. trade surplus and how it affects commodity markets today. I'm going to go about this speech by talking about the repeal of country of origin labeling, a brief synopsis of how that affects current commodities, but I'd first like to introduce myself a little bit more and my background in agriculture. Now, in central Ohio, in the state of Ohio, the average herd size for a lot of beef cattle is 17. On my farm, we hold 40 head of Simmental beef cattle, and we hold a feedlot of about 60 beef cattle every year that will be fed to finish. Now, in the state of Ohio, that is a very production-oriented farm, but across the nation, it may not be seen as one. But I view myself as a production-oriented beef producer. Now, to begin explaining how commodities prices and the U.S. trade surplus has been affected by so many different parts of agriculture over the last 2 years, I'd first like to talk about the country of origin labeling. Now, just recently, country of origin labeling has been repealed, but first we need to give it a definition. What this meant was that any agricultural product grown anywhere in the world, when it was brought to the United States on its packaging, had to say, where was this product grown? So if you were a rice farmer in China and you then sent that rice to the United States, on that package, it must say that this rice was grown in China. But this act has been repealed. That means that if I were to walk into any U.S. grocery store today and look at a list of different products, I would have no clue where it was grown, except for one agricultural product, and that is fish. Now, for fish, the reason that they label their packages is they must know off what coast that fish was caught in the wild. But this no longer applies to beef, pork, lamb, or grain crops. Now, some people might think, does it really matter if I know where my food comes from? To be honest with you, if I was to walk into a grocery store and see a lineup of 10 ribeye steaks, I'd probably just pick the biggest one there. But I started to think about this just a little bit more and into a little bit more detail. What factors can go into the quality of that product? Now, as I stated, I'm a beef producer, so I love to take a look at the beef industry all across the world. Right now, the United States produces more pounds of beef than any country in the world. But we only have the 4th most number of total beef cattle. Now, I'd like to compare that to another country. That is Brazil. Brazil has the 3rd most number of beef cattle within the nation. But Brazil has the 3rd most number of beef cattle within the entire world, but they only rank 4th on the amount of pounds grown per year recorded by ton. And recently, because of the repeal of the Country of Origin Labeling Act, the United States has began to accept Brazilian beef within our grocery stores. And again, how can this be seen as an issue? Well, in the Brazilian beef industry, many Brazilian cattle are suffering from a condition known as hoof and mouth disease. And now what that means is their cattle can suffer from a symptom where they will begin to grow sores around their hooves and around their mouth. Now, this disease has been out of the United States since the 1980s. And since we have just began to accept Brazilian beef, what can this mean for the safety of our products within our own country? Now, I know as a beef producer within the United States that prices will always fluctuate. The prices of commodities work on a law of averages. One year, you could gain so much money, but it's bound to drop. And currently in the United States beef practice, the most lucrative and money-making part is the cow-calf industry, no longer the feedlots. So when we begin to look at commodity parts, the money will fluctuate from different parts of the industry, whether you're producing the meat for the commodities that will then be exported, or whether you're just raising the cow-calves for the calves to go into the feedlot. So there are many different aspects that go into the trade surplus, but the biggest piece that I could find within my research was the recent repeal of country of origin labeling. I believe not only as an American citizen, but as an American beef producer, that everybody should have the right to know where their food and products come from. And with that being said, not knowing where our products can come from throughout this world can lead to health issues, not only to the meat quality itself, but to the herds and livestock and agricultural products in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan, for your presentation today. Would you share with us what you would consider to be the United States' most important trade partner and why?
We could talk about the United States' most important trade partner on many different aspects. If we were to look at it from an agricultural sense, we can, well, in a general sense, in terms of all trade, the largest amount of dollars that is transacted between the United States and any country would be China. But when we begin to look at individual markets, we can see where these will fluctuate. So the United States has many different products that they can send to many different parts of the world. Now, depending on where that product is and where it is needed, it can depend on what is our biggest supplier and our biggest exporter. But for the answer of that question, I'm going to use China.
How important do you see the potential passing of TPP to be in favor or not favor of our trade surplus?
TPP is going to be a very controversial act. And looking at it from the standpoint of a commercial beef producer in the area where I come from, I see TPP as something that can help and can limit the ability for United States producers to sell and export their products. And what I mean by that is it depends on where you are standing within the industry itself. So for my family, as I mentioned, we have about 60 head of feedlot beef cattle. Now, we only market that within the state of Ohio and within the United States. So TPP will not have a very large effect on our herd and what we do. But if you're looking at a more large scale, so let's take it out west into these big packing plants. So whether it be JVS, Tyson, or some of the other big names, TPP can affect their ability to market and work throughout the United States economics and the world economics.
Thank you for your speech. You talked about being in favor of cool. Why do you believe that many in the industry are against mandatory labeling?
There's a lot of different ways we can look at this. And as I described, coming from a production background and raising cattle within the United States, I want to make sure that my product can stand out from other products as well. Now, we can begin to look about how this can be affected. One of the top 5 packers in the United States of beef cattle, sheep, and hogs was just bought out by a foreign company in China. So if we see that one of those top 5 packing plants was bought out by a foreign country, we can see that they would want to not have country of origin labeling because of the fact that their product would then have something that discriminates or makes it different from the United States beef product. But again, coming from a United States production background, I do believe that we should sponsor our own products.
Evan, you typically think of the U.S. dollar being strong as a good thing. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a little bit about how a strong U.S. dollar affects people in agriculture that are looking to export the commodities that we produce?
Well, the U.S. dollar has stayed strong for the past few years. And actually, can you clarify, restate your question?
How does a strong U.S. dollar affect those that are trying to export agricultural goods to other countries?
A strong U.S. dollar can affect the ability to export to other countries because we put such a value on our products. Now, one of the biggest things I can use is beef within the grocery store is at an all-time high. But there's a reason that people want to buy beef. And it was a story told to me by Dr. Daniel Linden from the Ohio State University. He said that if you were to walk out of a restaurant, you will almost never hear anybody say, "Wow, that was a great piece of chicken." But you will hear somebody say, "Wow, that was a great steak, and I would come back for that again." So with the U.S. dollar staying strong and the ability to export all of these different products, it's the value of the product itself. And as I stated, beef prices within the United States are at an all-time high in the grocery store. So with that price being so high, it makes it harder and harder for us to export those products into other countries where they may not be able to afford it.
Evan, as a resident of Ohio, we've talked more about global issues. What is the role of a state as it relates to trade for our country?
Well, the state itself does not get to trade its products to other countries. That is all handled by a central government of the United States. So the state itself is only in charge of what it can produce and can provide. Okay, I'm very sorry. Thank you.
The judges will now have 3 minutes to collect their thoughts. If you must leave at this time, please do so right now before we introduce our next speaker. I failed to mention the topic for our first speaker before we began his speech. He had drawn the U.S. agriculture trade surplus has shrunk over the past 2 years as the commodity prices have dropped and the U.S. dollar has remained strong. Is it important? And if so, what should be done about it? Judges, your 3 minutes have expired. Are you ready for the next speaker? All right. If you're joining us for the first time, we ask you to observe just a few basic rules here in Finals Hall. Please take a moment to mute all electronic devices and ensure that we have a fair environment for all of our participants today. Courtesy Corps, would you please secure the doors? Our second speaker today is Mariah Alvarez of the Sebring FFA chapter in the state of Florida. Mariah will be speaking on the topic of urban agriculture can positively impact communities in many ways. How can FFA and agriculture education build a coalition to grow urban agriculture programs around the country?
A wise person once said, "We do not grow when things are easy, we grow when we face challenges." Agriculture is a true representation of this quote. Just as plants can grow through rocks, farmers, ranchers, and agriculturalists must find new and exciting ways to grow in an ever-changing world full of challenges. After all, feeding the world is no small task. It is a colossal 365-day per year job. No holidays, no sick days, and absolutely no exceptions. It is with these challenges in mind that agriculture plants a seed to expand, to explore, and to solve issues. Today, that seed of discussion happens to be urban agriculture and how we as this organization and agricultural education can form a coalition to spread that message across the country. To discuss, first we will talk about the positive effects urban agriculture has on a community. Second, we will discuss the ways FFA and agricultural education are coming together to provide that coalition. And third, we will discuss how we can spread that message in order to see urban ag farms pop up all over the country. So, urban agriculture, what is it anyway? Urban agriculture involves the act of producing agricultural products in traditionally urban environments. Cities like bustling New York, windy Chicago, and sunny Miami. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization Committee of the United Nations, urban agriculture has been proven to feed 700 million people, 1/4 of the world's urban population. Urban agriculture not only feeds the world's population, but imagine the positive impacts it can have on a community. It has been proven to increase biodiversity, decrease air pollution, provide community awareness and a sense of unity, and even reduce crime. Urban agriculture truly changes the face of the agricultural industry and the mold that we have established. But how can we, as FFA members in these spiffy blue corduroy jackets, come together with agricultural education and provide a coalition? Additionally, how can we connect a bridge in this topic? We've already made strides. By involving urban agriculture in the three-circle model of intercurricular agricultural education through land labs and SAEs, we have invited urban agriculture into the classroom, exposing the fact that in the year 2030, 60% of the world's population will live in urban environments, 60% who will need 3 meals a day, just like everybody else. We, as a national FFA organization, have made strides towards urban agricultural career development events and a state and national level proficiency. But finally, how do we increase that so that we can see urban farms pop up across this country? As members in these blue jackets, we have a variety of resources. Coming to the National FFA organization, we can propose this topic as a delegate body, encouraging state leaders to either draft or support a proposal, seeing a delegate committee at the next National FFA Convention and Expo. We can write letters encouraging educational specialists and resource guides here in this national organization to form a program, campaign, or urban agricultural initiative. We, as FFA members, can encourage the use of the tools that best serve this generation. I'm talking about social media. By creating a campaign, there is no way that urban ag will not hit this country like a ton of bricks. In conclusion, I'm reminded of my favorite quote. Thomas Jefferson said that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And as FFA members, we can transform purpose to action, doing extraordinary things for agriculture as ordinary members. As we partner with urban agriculture, explore the FFA organization, and innovate agricultural education, we change the mold of the industry of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Can you give us a few examples of programs that are happening across this country or right in your home state?
Yes, ma'am. In the city of Miami, actually in the state of Florida, we see a lot of high schools that are, have active FFA programs such as Ferguson or Varela, actually have urban ag department greenhouses in their community, rooftop gardens or community gardens for one, and they're able to actually use that as an SAE project or develop it as a land lab that they're able to use in their community and in their education.
Good morning. I grew up in a rural part of Minnesota. And for those people who have grown up in rural areas, why should they believe in the urban agriculture cause, and why should they believe that FFA should take this on?
I think they should believe in it simply because by the year 2050, we're going to have to feed 9.5 billion people. While conventional agriculture and urban agriculture are both completely different, they both have a place within this agricultural industry to help us reach that goal and make it become more attainable. I believe that even though it's not possible to sometimes see that other person's point of view, it's important to meet them halfway and really come towards them and say, I understand what you're doing as a conventional agriculturalist, but here's what we have to offer as urban agriculturalists. And we're not fighting to win the fight, we're fighting to solve the problem.
In your your mind, you know, you mentioned that FFA could champion a program. In your mind, what would that program consist of, and how would that work?
I think with this program, we could even offer advanced curriculum or conference material that the national organization could use in programs like Blast Off and LCSO, or just simply provide through the My Journey app for local state officers or local members to really take advantage of. So I think that if we were to encourage that, that would be one of the best ways to get that message across and use that initiative besides social media and hashing a campaign.
Where do you feel the balance is between some of the local kind of homegrown type of gardens and also this new venture that's called vertical farming fit in? Could you explain a little bit about vertical farming and how you see those two balancing each other out?
Absolutely. And speaking from a personal perspective, in my city of Sebring, our land lab has vertical farming with hydroponic systems in our garden, and we're able to use that local conventional type of rural farming and really incorporate it within that the hydroponic system and that type of gardening. And we really see those different types of benefits from each of those, and we're able to grow them in different locations at different times of year. So I think that's a way that we can form a balance. And by educating other students, we bring them in and show them these two different types of systems and the benefits and the negatives that we've observed from each of them.
Just a follow-up question. Do you see any examples of where they're taking that and putting it into larger scale? And, you know, not just a quarter-acre plot here, but in large situations. And could you tell us about some of those?
Yes, actually, in the Gotham Greens Company is a really popular urban agricultural initiative across the country. Right now, they're really positioned in New York, but they even have a city in Chicago that they're really active in. And through that program, they're able to use those local community garden plots in New York that they've developed, and also that hydroponic vertical system. And the vertical system is actually more popular within that program, and they grow, I believe it's 3 tons of food a year, if I'm remembering that correctly.
What do you think is the role of FFA working with urban agriculture and getting them to getting to careers in agriculture?
I think the role is basically showing that we have an initiative for it, that we're wanting to pursue that as a career, and that we're looking for ways to expand that way. I believe that once they see that expansion, there will be more careers that are more likely to form or pop up over the next few years, resulting in maybe college majors or college programs where you can attain a degree in urban agriculture and that kind of an urban agricultural communication.
What, one of the things that you look at in urban farming has other benefits besides just teaching and those things. What are some of the benefits of urban farming in terms of sometimes productivity is increased in areas where you can do a lot, but what are some of the other benefits?
Some of the benefits in larger scale cities like Miami and New York is the fact that transportation costs for food are at an all-time low. It's difficult to transport the food because it doesn't have to go as far of a distance, and there's less of a need for protective packaging because the food doesn't withstand a long time in that semi or in that tractor trailer. So they're able to really use that food and incorporate that nutritional value without having to spend so much money towards the fuel crisis and incorporating that global climate change and greenhouse gas. Thank you.
We are allowing 3 minutes for the judges to collect their thoughts. If you must leave Finals Hall, now is a good time to do so as we await our next speaker. Judges, your time has expired. Are you ready for the third speaker? All right. Welcome to Finals Hall. If you are just joining us, please take a moment to silence all electronic devices. This ensures that we have a fair environment for all of our speakers today. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. Courtesy Corps, please secure all doors at this time. Our third speaker today is Adrianne Palicki of the Stillwater FFA chapter in the state of Oklahoma. Adrianne's topic is, what is urban agriculture's role in the world food system?
His name is Daoud. He was an 11-year-old boy when my uncle met him during his first deployment to Afghanistan. This friendship strengthened every Friday during family visits to the market. My uncle shared his snacks with Daoud: cookies, crackers, jerky, and anything else he'd received in the mail. Uncle Barry learned that he had given this boy his very first cookie, and that Daoud lived mostly on rice, with protein served only once a week. This story of Daoud very well depicts the hunger issue in Afghanistan, as well as many other developing countries across our world. Luckily, here in the United States, we routinely consume vegetables, fruits, carbohydrates, and in my beef-producing family, a generous serving of protein. It's hard for me to understand a young child who can't have a well-rounded diet, but it's even harder for me to comprehend that this issue is so widespread. There are more than 1 billion people alive today that are just like Daoud. That's 1/7 of humanity that's undernourished. We're facing the task of feeding the world in a nutritious way. But there's no way to do that without capitalizing on new methods, new opportunities, and new technologies. Right now, there's giant buzz about urban agriculture. Nationally, there are no reliable statistics as to how many urban farms we have. The Census of Agriculture hasn't counted them, at least not yet. In Chicago, by one count, there are 230 community gardens and 60 urban farms. But that's small potatoes, pun intended, to the 75,000 farms throughout the state. Now, urban farms are not necessarily able to be described as a mature business sector quite yet, regardless of how rapidly they're growing. We never see urban farms producing more than 1 to 5% of domestic fruit and vegetable produce. That's not very much. As agriculturalists, we're faced with the task not only of feeding the world nutritiously, but feeding the world. We're required to increase food production by nearly 70% by the year 2050 to feed an estimated 9.7 billion people. And that's a ton. We have to be willing to take advantage of these opportunities, such as urban agriculture. What is the role that urban agriculture plays in the global food system? A small one. But it definitely contributes to the public's education about the world's food system. Urban agriculture is a golden ticket of sorts for education and agricultural literacy. It provides an opportunity for the general public and those consumers that are residing within those cities to be that close to production agriculture, even if it is community gardens and rooftop production. We have to be willing to take advantage of all of these different production methods to sustainably feed the world. I have one more story for you today. This one is about a boy named Michael, and he's in my sister's class at Stillwater Middle School. Addison noticed several times that Michael eats rapidly and always acts hungry. This 13-year-old boy in Stillwater, Oklahoma, doesn't get food at home on the weekends, ever. But Michael's situation isn't an isolated incident. Every Friday, literally hundreds of bags are filled with food and sent home with children in Stillwater alone. World hunger is right here in our own backyard. And this issue is one that cannot be ignored by anyone. Producers, consumers, or FFA members like me. Feeding 9 billion people in a truly sustainable way will be one of the greatest challenges our civilization has ever faced. It will require imagination, determination, and the hard work of countless individuals from all over the world. No child in Afghanistan or in Stillwater, Oklahoma, should ever, for any reason, go hungry. President John F. Kennedy said more than 50 years ago, we have the ability, we have the means, and we have the capacity to eliminate hunger from the face of the earth. We need only the will. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrianne. What do you believe FFA's role can be with this issue? And be specific.
I think that the FFA actually plays a huge role, especially when you're looking at world hunger and especially when you're looking at hunger here at home. The National FFA has a hunger challenge that's going around and has been for the past couple of years. Specifically in Oklahoma, it's known as the Oklahoma FFA Hunger Challenge. It's an opportunity for students that show livestock or that don't show livestock, they can do this as a chapter as well, to donate their livestock projects to the Hunger Challenge, which then in turn gets donated to the Regional Food Bank of Oklahoma. And that goes directly to the Food for Kids program, which is providing backpacks. It's that backpack program for those students that don't have food at home on the weekends. And it's making pork sticks and beef sticks so that I, as a student, I may not be directly involved in production agriculture. This is my experience. And my senior year, I had the opportunity to donate my show steer to this project. And that in turn was approximately 300 beef sticks for that backpack program.
Good morning. How do you convince people in rural America that urban agriculture is a worthwhile investment?
That's a fantastic question and is definitely one that we have to be working towards, because to sustainably feed the world, we have to have everyone on board. And this is something that we're seeing a strife in lots of different areas, especially when you look at conventional and organic, that type of relationship. And I think that the best way to continue to encourage that is doing what I can. And since I have this opinion of accepting all of these different methods and using them to work together to produce food in the most sustainable way, by projecting that opinion, I think that is something that will be encouraged. It has to be by word of mouth and building those relationships. There's not really a specific formula to be able to fix that. But I think it was capitalized best by a producer in the movie Farmland that was interviewed, and it was an organic producer. And he basically said, you know, there is this huge strife between my industry and the conventional side of things, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that they're doing, but it's working for them. And my production's working for me, and I respect what they're doing. There's no need for me to bash on their industry, and that's exactly the key, because if we as agriculturalists are bashing other agriculturalists, how are we expecting the consumers to trust us if we don't even trust each other?
As you know, consumers are increasingly demanding transparency in their food. What does that look like for urban agriculture?
I think urban agriculture is one of the best ways that transparency is coming into play. When we look at, when I think of transparency right now, one of the hottest topics is GMO labeling, and as to whether or not that should be something that's happening in the future. But when it comes to urban agriculture, it is so transparent already, because it's an opportunity for those individuals within the community. You know, you see a community garden, it's an opportunity for them to be involved directly with that garden. And I think that that's such a fantastic opportunity to be transparent. And transparency is so key in getting the public to perceive our production and our production methods in a good light.
You know, one of the big trends that we've seen in urban agriculture is this system called vertical farming, you know, and that seems to be a lot larger in scale and more capitalized. What role do you see that playing in the food system?
It definitely does play a role, and this is the key to increasing food production in a way to be able to sustainably feed the world, is that it has to be every single little facet that we can get our hands on, because even though there aren't very many vertical farms out there, there are a few, it still plays a role. Even though urban ag is only 1 to 5% of domestic fruit and vegetable production, it is still 1 to 5%. It's still providing something. And there is a niche market for that. There are people that want their food to be locally grown, whether that's in an urban setting or whether it's from a conventional farm. There is a niche market for it, and vertical farming is one of those.
There are some concerns with urban farming, in particular food safety concerns. What does that look like in your mind? Does it outweigh the benefits of urban farming?
I don't necessarily think so, because food safety has been something we've been facing for centuries, and food has never necessarily been safe. There's always a risk that you run. Thank you.
The judges will now have 3 minutes to complete their thoughts. If you must leave, now is the time to do so. Judges, 3 minutes has expired. Are you ready for the next speaker? Perfect. If you are joining us for the first time here in Finals Hall, there are a few rules to observe. We please ask that you take a moment to silence all electronic devices at this time. This will ensure that every speaker has a fair environment to participate in. Also, if you must leave, we ask that you do so at this time. Otherwise, please wait until the final speaker has concluded the speech. Courtesy Corps, please secure all doors at this time. Our fourth speaker today is Andrew Skidmore from Atwater, California. His topic is, even though farming accounts only account for 1% of the total national workforce, it is the core of the food and fiber system. How can we more effectively communicate with the other 99%?
At my local Merced County Fair, there's an annual program called Friends of Merced County Fair. At this event, students like me in 4-H and FFA take a group of disabled middle school or elementary students around the fair, explaining the livestock and the purpose of our organizations. A few years ago, I had a deaf group. I tried my best to verbally communicate with their teacher and use my body to try to experiment and describe what agriculture is all about. At the end of the day, I had 30 excellent friends that I've never even heard their voice. There are many barriers facing us communicating agriculture to others, especially deaf individuals. But communicating the message of agriculture is more important than ever. How can we effectively communicate the agriculture message to the rest of the population? The first step is identifying who. According to the American Farm Bureau, 2% of our population is tied directly to production agriculture. This leaves us with 98% of our estimated 326 million people in the United States and 7.3 billion globally to try to communicate with. This is an unsurmountable task. The American Farm Bureau also has the 20-60-20 rule. 20% of our population has favorable views of agriculture. They either work in agriculture production facilities, they might be a truck driver hauling agricultural products, but they support agriculture. There's also an estimated 20% of our population who have negative views of agriculture. They either don't have our shared values or animal rights activists who don't believe in the production agriculture method. This leaves us with 60% of the rest of the population, called the movable middle. How do we communicate to them? Street Fight Magazine is a grassroots entrepreneurship organization that conducted a poll on the most effective marketing strategies for small businesses. 67% of the respondents said that social media was their most effective marketing strategy, followed by search engine optimization at 43%. This shows that the internet footprint of agriculture is more needed than ever. Utilizing social media and search engine optimization, obtaining a high result on Google, we can ensure that we are better communicating our message and providing accessible information to our interested consumers. Why do we communicate the message of agriculture? My mother works at a cheese factory in the visitor center in the heart of Central California. One day she had a visitor from San Francisco. This young lady was describing to my mother that she only ate pork shoulder because it was the part of the pig that regrew after it was harvested. We all know that that is absolutely not true, but it goes to show the disconnect between production agriculture and many of our consumers. The guiding principle behind this is consumer trust. Since 2012, the Center for Food Integrity has been examining under a microscope of what consumer trust is and how it drives. They found that consumers trust farmers because they believe we have shared values. In our rush to meet the global demand for our food, using new technologies like CRISPR, different legal structures, and mechanization, we have lost those values in communicating our processes to consumers. As we can all know, in relationships, without good communication, we are not going to have good trust. And that is why our American and global consumers don't trust American farmers. This falls in line with the principle of a social license. When consumers trust farmers to produce and feed their family, they give them an unwritten allowance to continue their job of providing food. This is called a social license. So we describe who we are trying to target, the movable middle, using different marketing strategies and why. There will always be barriers for American agriculture to share our message, just like my deaf students that I was trying to communicate with at Friends of Merced County Fair. My 8th grade year, I was getting ready for the dinner dance, a very fabulous and glamorous event. Rumors had it that I was going to ask Mallory out to the 8th grade dinner dance, something that was not true. But my friends filled in all the details of the rumors, whether I was going to get flowers or chocolate, when I was going to pop the question. After lunch recess, I had to march over to Mallory and inform her that I was, in fact, not going to ask her to the dinner dance. Now, not only was Mallory very relieved, but it provided me with an important moral that American agriculture can continue with. Someone will always answer the questions that consumers are asking. If we are not answering the questions of American consumers, someone else will. We need to be the ones answering the questions of American consumers and providing our global consumers the trust that they need in food and fiber systems in America so we can continue our global mission to feed the world. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. It's an election year. You're the advisor for the 2 presidential candidates. How would you advise them to talk about agriculture?
The first advice I would give is to listen. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen to agriculture. We're a very vocal 2%, and rightfully so. We play a key part in not only our natural resources, but also in our economy. Listen to what they have to say, their struggles. The second advice I would give is stop, drop, and roll. Our regulatory groups are on fire with producing new regulations. And just like someone who is on fire, first we are going to stop, not produce any more regulations, drop any civil lawsuits that are preventing agriculturists from continuing their task, and then roll. Gently glide into the future. Oftentimes, many politicians make very unforeseen promises on the first day, where they promise grandiose actions on their first day of office. Glide gently into something that they're new into. Years and years of preparation has been made and work has been made on agricultural policy and communicating with others before they even got there. Examine that and then make action when they're more knowledgeable.
Good morning. Curious, in agriculture, we sometimes have a little conflict with each other. How do we get agriculture to work together to have a common message?
Agriculture is often diffractured, but the common message is what we do together. Feed the world. That is a guiding principle in agriculture in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, North America. By uniting behind our common message of providing safe, wholesome, and nutritious food to the world, we can find common ground. And wherever we can find common ground, we can find a push to communicate better to consumers.
What are some examples of when we've done it right, when we've communicated correctly to consumers?
The best example I can think of communicating to consumers is when we're often providing an experience to those consumers who are curious. We're all curious about how our food is produced, and providing a valuable experience by either hands-on experience. Look at the career show. There's a lot of hands-on experience of what agriculture physically looks like in modern day across the globe. Providing those experiences are effective ways. My sister and I started our FACT program in our county fair, the Fair Awareness Campaign to Teach. And every night, 2 volunteers stood at our barns, the different barns, swine, beef, goats, and we would answer the public's questions about agriculture. I could think of no better effective communication method than from the youth of agriculture describing their experiences, right with their experience projects behind them, to consumers about what we do and why we do it.
You mentioned social media and search engines and your presentation, and how would they have the ability to affect agriculture and to be able to communicate that? What are some great examples that you've seen, and what would you encourage agriculture to do more of in that space?
Some great examples I've seen. American Farm Bureau does an excellent job. I follow an account in California called California Grown that does an excellent job of displaying different agriculture production methods in California along with different crops. What we should be doing, we should be engaging in common ground values of consumers. Consumers value hard work because they're hardworking Americans. They value trust because they have to do it within their own families. I'm building our social media accounts upon displaying those character traits and values through our processes. Trust in the relationships we have. Fairness in the dealings that we conduct with others. Through the actions we have of harvesting crops, growing crops, producing the crops. Through displaying those processes and conveying those traits and values, we can do a better job of meeting the American public in the middle.
What do you think, or what do you feel? I mean, we've kind of discussed a little bit about what are some of the places that us and agriculture collide and uniting under that same mission. So we talked about the presidential candidates. What would you tell agriculture to stop, drop, and roll about?
I would tell agriculture to stop, drop, and roll about fighting within each other. Like you described, we need to have this common ground. We're just 2% of our population. We're already fighting within ourselves, and that's not going to be an effective way to convince the others that we're doing a great job, because we can't even agree on us doing a great job. By doing that and starting that within agriculture, stop fighting.
Time.
Thank you.
This concludes the finals of the Extemporaneous public speaking event. This is one way FFA members can develop their ability to communicate in a powerful, organized, and professional manner while boosting their self-confidence and earn recognition for it. Congratulations to all of our speakers today. Join me in thanking our speakers, judges, and timekeepers. The results of this event will be announced during the 7th General Session tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. in Bankers Life Fieldhouse. I welcome you to join us at our next event here at Finals Hall at 1:30 p.m., the Agriculture Issues Forum. Thank you for attending and enjoy the rest of convention.